views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Daren Jaime. Today, we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough, as well as across New York City. Well, coming up on today's show, we go front and center with the issue of reopening. New York court system is set to reopen. We'll tell you what you can expect moving forward. And speaking of reopening, we'll learn about obstacles restaurant owners are currently facing during this pandemic, as well as give you an update as the current status of New York City dining. And then a little later on the show, we'll talk about the results of a recent survey of New Yorkers in response to the COVID-19 vaccine. And then we'll discuss how Bronx Community College's Director of Online Learning is establishing a new model for students during the pandemic. And then finally, we'll learn about a women's-based movement providing different artistic platforms for survivors of abuse as well as trauma. So stay tuned because all this and much more is heading your way. Right now, we're officially open. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Open. My name is Daren Jaime. Of course, you're watching Open on March 17th. It's a live interactive program that brings the Bronx to New York City straight to your TV set. We also want to welcome our viewers on Manhattan Neighborhood Network as Open is broadcast live simultaneously on the MNN channel. We invite you to stay connected to us on our website at bronxnet.org and all of our social media platforms at BronxNet TV. Well, a lot has certainly been going on through the course of the past week. We'll take you through a couple of things with our Bronx updates. Starting with coronavirus news, New York and New Jersey will have indoor dining capacities now at 50%. In a joint announcement with New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and New Jersey Governor Philip Murphy, they announced that March the 19th, restaurants in both states can expand their indoor dining capacity. The governor also announced travelers coming to New York can completely bypass coronavirus quarantine starting on April the 1st. Travelers must also still continue to fill out the state's traveler health form. In other news, we go now to the borough of the Bronx and South Bronx particularly. A group of Bronxites held a rally and march to demand the release of a Bronx resident named Javier Castillo Maradiaga, who remains in ICE custody after being arrested for jaywalking back in December of 2019. Our BronxNet reporter Sanji Lopez brings us the details of the story.
Say, no ICE! No KKK, no fascist USA!
Holding signs reading Crush ICE and Free Javier, a group of Bronxites and supporters held a rally and march in the South Bronx to demand the release of Bronx resident Javier Castillo Maradiaga, who remains in ICE custody after being arrested for jaywalking back in December 2019.
Because we still got an enemy in ICE, we still got an enemy in Democrats that are still caging our people and taking them. And for what reason? Because they're jaywalking.
It's something that you don't want your family to go through, but it is something that you always are waiting for, though. We are immigrants. We know that sooner or later our time will come. This was our time.
Javier, who is DACA eligible, has lived in the United States since he was 7 years old. Legal service organization Unlocal helped stop Javier's unlawful deportation, which happened despite President Biden's 100-day deportation moratorium.
But then a Texas judge who was appointed by Trump reversed the moratorium and said that it did not apply. They've been flying him all over the country. They flew him to Louisiana. We fought to get him back, and we filed numerous petitions in various courts, and we are fighting every day for his release.
Organizers say that Javier's case is not an isolated one, as they advocate for the release of all immigrants in cages and stress the prison to deportation pipeline and the mass deportations that took place under the Biden-Obama administration.
We have to hold Democrats accountable. We have to hold Biden accountable, and we have to hold the progressive congressmen and women who, got to their offices promising us to fight to abolish ICE, and they're nowhere to be found yet.
Ha sido una pesadilla para muchos Javier, muchos José, muchos Mariana, muchos de nuestros compañeros de trabajo, muchos de nuestra comunidad que están bajo la custodia de ICE.
Reporting for BronxNet, Sanji Lopez.
And thank you, Sanjay. And of course, we'll continue to follow this story and more here on Open. We have more show. Don't go anywhere. We're taking a quick break, but we'll return right after this.
There's a special election on Tuesday, March 23rd, and if you live in any of these neighborhoods, you'll want to pay attention. Your councilman, Andrew Cohen, is now a judge, and there are 5 candidates looking to replace him. Whoever wins on March 23rd will join New York City's primary lawmaking body, making decisions that affect you, your family, your home, and even your workplace. Starting in 2021, New York City will use ranked choice voting in primary and special elections for local offices. Ranked choice voting simply means that voters can rank up to 5 candidates in order of preference, instead of casting a vote for just one. You can still vote for just one candidate if you prefer. You can learn everything there is to know about the District 11 City Council race and the candidates by visiting ballotpedia.org and riverdalepress.com. Stay informed, and most importantly, make sure you mail your absentee ballot the day before Election Day on March 23rd, or safely head out to the polls to have your vote count and your voice heard.
And welcome back to the show. New York State civil and criminal trials will resume on March 22nd, despite many prosecutors and defense attorneys not yet still being eligible to be vaccinated. According to data from the Office of the Court Administration, lawsuits filed in the state dropped by 24% in 2020 compared to 2019. The COVID-19 pandemic has kept most civil lawsuits in New York from moving to trials where jurors could award monetary judgments. Now, although courthouse environments and cramped office spaces continue to pose a substantial risk for exposure to COVID-19 daily, the question is, what can people actually expect moving forward? Joining us now with more details is the founding partner of the Haicken Law, PLLC. We're pleased to be joined by Matthew Haicken, and thank you so much for joining us, Matthew.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And as first of all, I guess, give me a little bit about your initial take. As we say, it's good on one end that the courts are opening up. Things seem to get back to business for you in a more tangible way. But then I know there is that skepticism that a lot of lawmakers have, simply because you've got this situation where no vaccinations yet. So what are your colleagues saying about this no vaccination series?
To me, and to most of the people I've talked to about it, everybody is really happy about the courts reopening. We're really excited. I'm not a doctor, but it seems like it can be done safely. Some of the courtrooms are very large. I think those are the ones that are going to be used. People can sit, at least 10 feet away from each other. It's not like we're going to have all the jurors in that little box. Everybody's going to have masks on. And I think it can be done. And the statistic you mentioned, it's true that lawsuits that have been filed are down. I think that's mostly a result of just there have been less accidents because everybody's been at home. But I think the more interesting statistic is the amount of cases, or the percentage of cases that have settled. It was in a daily news article recently. I forget the numbers, but cases have not been settling at the rate they used to because there have been no trials. So the insurance companies and these big corporations, they don't really have a need to pay until there's a trial. So for me and for my clients, this is a godsend.
Yeah. And so when we look at this, we also have this whole situation of evictions, right? We understand that when the moratorium goes out, there's going to be a lot more people in court dealing with evictions and that backlog. We already knew there's a pre-existing backlog. Talk to me about what can we expect once these doors open up, and how is that backlog going to play out?
As far as the backlog in personal injury cases, it's been rough on a lot of clients. People have had to take settlements that are really inadequate. But but now that things are opening up, I think the insurance companies they're gonna start. They don't want to go to trial. And the old saying is, the heat of the courthouse melts the gold, right? So the closer you get to trial, that's when the insurance companies start going, okay, maybe we don't want to let 6 random people from the community decide this. Maybe we should come to maybe make a deal.
Right.
So,
what advice were you giving your clients? I mean, given the fact that that the courts have been closed, there have been virtual proceedings that have gone on, but now that you're going back to in-person, what advice have you given them about waiting and letting the in-person process play out?
so it's been tough on a lot of them. I've had to tell them, my advice is, hang in there, but that's easier for me than for a lot of my clients. And I've also, when the insurance companies have come back with settlements that are smaller than we were expecting, offers, I've had to tell my clients, look, I'm happy to wait it out. I have the money to wait. But because of this backlog, and because, when we go back to trial, they're only going to be using the bigger courtrooms. It could be it's not like, okay, we're back on, your trial's next. It could be another still 2 or 3 years before, your case gets to trial. So I've had to tell my clients, I'll wait it out. I'll go to trial if you want, but maybe you should take this offer. And a lot of them have, and it's the insurance companies, they've really taken advantage of it. So it's unfortunate, but it's just what happened. And hopefully going forward, we can have Zoom jury trials, even when there's not a pandemic. And we don't know if this is the last one. So they're having them in other states. I know I mentioned this last time I was on here. I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I think that's going to be the way to go in the future.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there'll be hybrids. I would imagine, looking at where we are and with the possibility of people being reinfected and new strands, I'm sure that we're totally not out of the woods. Thanks for long-term consideration. Are you optimistic though, with the courts reopening, that you get a lot of progress?
I would say cautiously optimistic. I mean, everybody was really excited when the courts opened I believe it was October, and they had a few trials in October, November, and then everything got shut down. And I understand they had to shut them down for safety reasons. We don't want a trial to be a spreader event. So I'm afraid that could happen again. I mean, I'm of course, just like everybody else, I'm thrilled. I can't wait to get my vaccine. I'm looking forward to it, to being able to go to court, but I could definitely see people letting their guard down, and there being more a spike in COVID, which could lead to the courts being shut down again. And I think we really, as our state, I know the judges are working hard trying to figure things out, but not just regular proceedings, but a full-on jury trial over Zoom, where we bring laptops to people who can't afford them. And I think we're going to have to go that route.
Yeah. Take us inside from a lawyer's perspective. We understand what it's like for the client having to wait through this process. What's it been like for you throughout the course of this pandemic, leading up to this moment?
I mean, things have been slow. I mean, I was fortunate that I've had some great settlements over the past couple of years. And the first few months of the pandemic, insurance companies, they were settling cases. I was very surprised. I think, nobody knew where things were going. Nobody knew how long it was going to last. So insurance companies did settle, and I did okay. But I mean, the good news is the court system became much more efficient overnight. It was really incredible. Things that, lawyers have been pushing for years, and we were told, oh, that's impossible. We can't do this over the phone. We can't do this on teleconference. It just, boom, everybody started doing it. Everything became paperless. So that was really nice. But I mean, I had a lot of free time. I mean, the first few months of the pandemic, my wife and I, we were terrified of living in the city, and we relocated to Rockland County for a few months, and I became a Meals on Wheels driver 3 days a week. It really wasn't, I don't know if it was altruistic. I just had nothing else to do. So I figured I would, do that. So, and it's enabled me to, I took a month off and knocked on doors in Philadelphia for Biden. But it's just been, I mean, things have just been been, on the one hand, they've been slow because there aren't that many accidents and there are no trials. And then it's also, the pandemic has also made it technologically possible where you can be in, 4 courthouses, so to speak, in one morning.
Well, Matthew, thank you so much for the work that you've done with Meals on Wheels, serving the elderly and those in a time of need and going the extra mile. And we'll definitely have to have you back to talk a little bit more as the doors open. You give us an inside look as to how things are going.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
All righty, Matthew Haicken. Now, for more information, you can visit him at his website, haickenlaw.com. And we want you to stay with us. We got more show coming up in a few.
When taking public transportation, don't touch your phone. Carry hand sanitizer and use it immediately upon leaving the bus or train. Avoid touching your face. If someone is coughing or sneezing, move away. Wash your hands with soap and water as soon as possible. Limit contact with poles. If possible, avoid rush hour. Don't eat or drink on public transportation. Keep your bag off the floor or other surfaces. Avoid directly touching turnstiles. Stay up to date with the latest from your local health department and CDC.
And welcome back to the show. WeShield Sources distributes high-quality personal protective equipment as well as safety supplies to the largest hospitals, healthcare networks, retail entertainment brands in the United States. The organization was founded by a group of entrepreneurs who wanted to help those around them during the outbreak of the pandemic by searching for ways to solve problems more efficiently and meeting the safety needs of people and workforces fighting on the front line of the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining us now to share a little bit more and provide further insight is the co-chief operating officer at WeShield, Erika London. And Erika, good to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I know that you said, as I said, the lead, this was formed by entrepreneurs who really wanted to make a difference. Give us a little bit about where we are today as far as restaurants, and are they adequately being prepared for reopening through personal protective equipment?
Sure. When we started this long time ago, I'm a restaurant owner. Before the pandemic hit, I owned and operated about a dozen restaurants up and down the East Coast. Obviously last March, this is coming up on the 1-year anniversary, here we are. The market was crushed. The industry was completely devastated and all of the restaurants were shut down. When it first started, we had no idea how long it was going to last. We thought maybe, a month. We let go of our over 200 employees and said, just sit tight. We'll be back in a month. Shortly after, we kind of realized that this was going to be for the long haul here. In the beginning, my partners and I were kind of sitting tight, but the entrepreneurial spirit, we couldn't just sit there and do nothing. We had to go and, we had to help people. We had a lot of friends in healthcare that we were, it was devastating what was happening. They were using one-time masks for several days on end because they just didn't have access to anything else. They were using garbage bags to make, isolation gowns in hospitals. It was a very scary and very desperate time. So, we used our network and used our separate skill sets, and we combined forces with a couple different business owners who all were, quiet during that time, and WeShield started. Our restaurants are slowly starting to open back up, and it's definitely been a roller coaster of a ride of opening, not opening, closing, shutting down, back open. Right now, we're definitely making big steps and a lot of progress, and it feels very promising of what's happening in New York City specifically. We have other restaurants in Florida and Chicago and New Jersey. So, there's different guidelines, obviously, by state. But in New York specifically, the warmer weather is definitely getting people excited because I think people are just overall more comfortable eating outside. And just feel, for whatever reason, the virus is less scary when it's warm out. In regards to the capacity, we're very excited to be opening at 50% as of this Friday. But any restaurant owner can tell you 50% is just not enough. Right. We need to get to 100. So, the rest of the state is at 75%. We are hoping to get there sooner than later. And, in terms of, are we prepared or the restaurants prepared? Sure, the accessibility isn't the issue at this point, but the cost is. right now to properly equip your employees with the, with the PPE that's necessary to follow the guidelines and to keep your employees safe and to keep your customers safe. I mean, it could cost you anywhere from $5 to $10 per employee per day. That's, that's the equivalent of almost an extra hour a day that you're putting out in your cost. That's a lot for your bottom line at a time when you're already operating at a significantly smaller capacity with a lot less resources.
Yeah. Give us an idea. I mean, we're at the summer. The summer is right around the corner. You're talking about across the Eastern Seaboard, a lot of varying things. Some places are open, some places aren't. Talk to us about what can we expect this summer by way of restaurants and their preparedness.
Sure. So I think, everybody has probably already, if you're still open from the winter, you've probably spent a good amount of money on the outdoor seating and whatever enclosures and, the permits and whatever else is needed for the outdoor dining. So I think the restaurants that have been open all winter are super excited to get more people outside for the summertime, and they already have that built. Luckily, with the summer, you obviously don't need the enclosures. So for the restaurants that have been kind of holding tight, maybe didn't have the budgets to build out these, outdoor seating structures, they need a lot less. They have the tables and chairs from inside. They're going to put them out. And I think summer, we're going to see a big spike in not cases, but people going out just because they're going to be more excited and more comfortable.
So for restaurants right now, obviously, what would you, a lot of challenges, you've outlined them before. Talk to me about what do you deem to be the biggest challenge that maybe the public isn't aware of right now?
Maybe what the public isn't aware of. I mean, I don't think there's anything new. I think the biggest challenge is really the cost. I think people really underestimate how much, margins in restaurants aren't huge to begin with. Most people are in this industry not to make money, but because they're truly passionate about the business, the cuisine they're putting out, the experience they're creating for their customers. So, being cut to 50%, people are like, oh, well, it's 50% now. I mean, you can, 50% is really tough to operate on. So, I think the biggest challenge for restaurant owners, you're at a limited capacity, you're still keeping your guests 6 feet apart, and then you have to buy the PPE, which, as I mentioned, is a hefty cost per employee.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about you for a moment, as this is Women's History Month, and a lot of emphasis has been placed on empowering and educating women. Talk to us about you being a female restaurant owner and being an owner. What's the experience been like for you?
Experience for me, I mean, I've had a great experience. There's been many challenges. I'm definitely very grateful for where I am and everyone I've come across and all the women that have, helped me get here and empowered me along the way. And, now more than ever is, this is the most important time for women to support each other and empower each other. And, what's happening to women in the workforce overall it's devastating. In the last year, the number of women that have been forced to leave the workforce, it's likely set us back probably about a decade from where we were before this pandemic started. So, for me, I'm definitely looking to help, bring as many people on board and as many women on board. And I think, the childcare crisis, I think is the biggest problem, which sadly you and I cannot ourselves solve. But, what we can do as female business leaders, we have a power as leaders that we can choose to exercise to help, help equality in our own workplaces. You need to use a lot of flexibility and creativity to create equality. You need to figure out what you stand for, what you believe in, and what you want your workforce to represent for the women, to make them feel comfortable, to make them feel like they can have both, that they, have options, that they have flexibility. You need to talk about it, and you need to create a work culture and, that supports that and not tolerate behavior or anything else that goes against it.
Real quickly, I mean, you've had the opportunity to transition as well. You talked about being creative, right? You talked about being that owner and then shifting off to doing this, where you're providing PPE supplies to those who are affected. Talk to us about being an entrepreneur and making that shift, especially in a time like this.
Sure. I mean, any successful entrepreneur knows that you need to have your finger on the pulse at all times, and you need to constantly be evolving your business and changing things so you stay relevant and you stay competitive and that you stay interesting, right? There's a million different businesses popping up all the time. This is not exactly the same, but the core message being that, what do they say? Change is inevitable, growth is optional. the life is changing around us at all times. If we're not creative and if we're not adaptable, you know, you kind of get left behind. So, you know, for the entrepreneurs right now, many people's businesses have been ripped apart. Many people's businesses have been completely torn down. I think the most important thing to remember is that you had a successful business, even if you don't right now. And that means that you have a core skill set, or you have something that is of value that you can then translate into something else if need be, or bring it back. You know, the entrepreneurial mindset, I think, you know, the most valuable part of it is, you know, changing your vision and your perspective and how you're going to handle a situation. I think in the beginning, for me personally and for my partners, of course, when it happened, we were full of anger, you know, like, why our industry? Why our business? Like, it's not a secret that the hospitality industry was hit the hardest of, you know, every other industry, because that's just what it is. But, you know, staying angry at what we lost or what was taken away from us, or, you know, it wasn't fair. Sure, those feelings are of course there, but I think the best thing that you can do, and my advice for anyone else out there, you know, take that anger, you have a lot of emotion in there, and convert it into motivation and creativity to figure out, how are you going to get through this? How are you going to push through? For restaurant owners specifically, you know, we see the light. The vaccinations are up. People are definitely coming out more. People are dying to get out of their houses and into your businesses. So, you know, stay strong and keep fighting, because we're almost there.
All right. Well, Erika, we have to leave it there. Thank you for the great work that you're doing, and, you know, giving that support to restaurants and owners, much needed during a time like this. And definitely, I know the hospitality industry has been severely hit, and you're doing your part in bridging that gap. Thank you so much, Erika.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All righty. Want our viewers to know for more information, guess what? You can go to their website at WeShield.us and follow them on social media at WeShield.social. Gotta take a quick break. We got more show coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. Welcome back. The Thinkubator and Bronx Community Foundation conducted a survey of New York City residents and their response to the COVID-19 vaccine. The survey shows the respondents' knowledge of the vaccine, where they received their information from, and whether they'd actually like to take the vaccine or not, and the reasons for their decisions regarding the vaccine. Here now, share a little bit more about this is the Thinkubator's president and CEO, Dr. Edward Summers. And then we also have the lead facilitator and manager of Youth Voice, Julian Joyner. And welcome both to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Let's go right at it and talk a little bit about this survey. Dr. Summers, give us a little bit about the background as to why you felt this survey was particularly important.
Sure, thank you. So the Thinkubator and the think tank at the Thinkubator teamed up with the Bronx Community Foundation to think about COVID-19 and its impact on the Bronx. And we wanted to look at, in particular, hesitancy and whether folks, as the COVID-19 vaccine has been announced in December and in January, wanted to look at whether Bronx residents will take the vaccine. And if they would, what were some of the factors influencing their decisions to take the vaccine and or not take it. So we were really thinking about how, if, you know, health has been a major issue in the Bronx, as we know. We know that COVID-19 has severely impacted the Bronx. The Bronx has been ranking 5th in the nation in terms of the number of deaths and the number of cases as well. And so we wanted to really think about and see and evaluate what were going to happen in the Bronx, what were residents thinking. And so what this study revealed to us is a stark difference between what residents in Manhattan and other boroughs were thinking compared to the Bronx. And particularly started to look at whether people were just going to take the vaccine. And we noticed that nearly 60% of residents from Manhattan and other parts of New York City were going to take the vaccine versus about 46% of Bronx residents decided that or stated in the survey that they were going to take the vaccine, which for us is it's significant. That's nearly about 13, 14 points spread between those in the rest of New York City versus those in the Bronx. And so for us, that's a big indicator that there's work that needs to be done in the Bronx to make sure that we have a healthy Bronx, a Bronx that doesn't continue to rank 5th in the nation in terms of the number of deaths and the number of COVID-19 cases. So that was really the impetus behind us, is really just understanding people's perspective on the vaccine and understanding whether they were going to take it or not.
Yeah. Julian, with that number right out there, being number 5 in the nation in actual deaths, that's a huge number. And so the vaccine would definitely seem like something that people would want to take. But I know that your survey has shown some pretty interesting statistics.
That's exactly right. And it makes sense to us that folks would have misgivings about taking the vaccine, especially with what we've seen historically in Black and Brown communities. The Tuskegee experiments come to mind. A lot of folks had voiced that the quick turnaround time in the development of the vaccine and the subsequent release were some things that sort of made them uncomfortable because typically these sorts of things take a lot longer. But it is alarming because like Eddie highlighted, and like you just stated, 5th in the nation is huge. In one of the richest cities, on this earth, certainly one of the richest in this country. It's alarming that we have so many folks who are so greatly impacted by this and that are not able to either have, sterling information about the vaccine or access to it. And a lot of what we were seeing initially is that when these vaccine sites were cropping up, is that a lot of folks from outside of the community were coming in to take advantage of it. And so we wanted to better understand, in our own communities, because we don't just work here, we live here as well, what was the hang up, and was there anything that we could do to sort of understand better and assuage some of these concerns?
Julian, give me a little bit more about the hesitancy. How much of did you find a hesitancy? We know that there's that talk about the Tuskegee experiment. We know about the disparities between within healthcare for Black and Brown communities. So right here in the borough of the Bronx, from what you found, how much of a hesitancy did you uncover?
Sure. So I'd like to highlight that we did a separate survey that just focused on the residents of the Bronx. And in that, we had about over 50% of folks who said that they would not take the survey, that they were feeling some sort of hesitancy around it. Many of those folks said that they were getting information not from medical professionals, but from folks in their own family. And I believe that when you have, that sort of information, and you're not necessarily getting this information from the CDC, or you're not getting this information, from your doctor, but you're getting this very anecdotal information. So for example, most of them were concerned about the side effects of the vaccine and what it might do to their body. Most of them had, even though they didn't say that they would want to take the vaccine, they had a pretty positive outlook about it in general. And then we were sure to make sure that there was an even split between the youth and older folks and surveying these responses. Surprisingly, though, youth were more reluctant to taking this survey than the older folks.
Wow. Dr. Summers, with this survey, obviously a lot of information, a lot of data is shared. What is the plan with this information going forward?
Sure. So in our policy brief that we released, what we have is outlined 3 recommendations. Given what we know about the hesitancy of Bronx residents, in our policy brief, we talk about a strategic communication plan in terms of really thinking about how we communicate the pros and cons of the vaccine. Now, we're not taking a positive or negative position, but what we really want folks to do is to really think about the pros and cons of what it means to take the vaccine or not take it for our respective community. And what we state in this is that we need a boots to the ground strategy, similar to the way in which politicians campaign when it's election season to garner people's votes. We feel like we need an information campaign similar to that, where elected officials, church leaders, celebrities from the Bronx are going on the ground to really talk about the pros and cons of the vaccine. We, again, can't mention enough, being 5th in the nation, that's huge huge in terms of the number of deaths and the number of COVID cases that we have in the borough. So that's one part of the strategy. The second part of the strategy is to really look at these structural issues that Julian mentioned. The fact that in the beginning, when the vaccine was first being distributed, that many people from outside our community were coming into our community to take the vaccine. So we need to really think about some of these structural issues about where like accessibility of the vaccine, where we're actually giving the vaccine out at. Increasingly, we're seeing a little bit more and more of sites like Yankee Stadium pop up where it's now 24 hours. And so but we need many more sites in the localized communities, in zip codes, in communities such as Haven and Hybrid and other communities to make sure that there's true accessibility. We need that Rite Aid, until not just Rite Aid, but the local pharmacy. I know in the Haven section, Kramer's Pharmacy has been around for 60 plus years, and that's a staple in that community. People trust Kramer's, they don't trust Rite Aid necessarily in the Haven. So we need to think about these community assets where we could be able to distribute the vaccine. And then the third is making sure that there are resources going to organizations who are quite frankly out there on the front lines talking about the vaccine and trying to disseminate information. We need to make sure that our city and our state government and even the federal government is dedicating resources to these entities to make sure that we're able to make sure that many people are getting as much information as possible about the vaccine to make informed decisions about the way to take the vaccine. So those are our recommendations. We've released this to the city, we've released this to the state. We've already seen some reaction to our recommendations in the affirmative. I know also that our partners, the Bronx Community Foundation, they are thinking about their action plan and what they're going to do to support these efforts. I know that they were hiring a COVID-19 project manager to think about their reaction to COVID-19. So these are some of the things that we want to see for our borough, because healthcare is critically important of our borough, and we know it's tied to not only health but everything else in our borough. The successful reopening our borough, the economic vitality of our borough. This is all connected to how we respond to COVID-19. So it's critically important that we have a community engaged response to dealing with this issue.
Julian, I got to wrap up, but I got to ask you this question before we shut down. When the vaccine becomes available to young people, any indicator as to whether or not young people will actually be willing to take the vaccine?
I believe they will. I believe that as it starts to roll out and more access becomes available to it, that they receive more information, maybe from news sources, maybe from more people that they trust, maybe more than this anecdotal information that they're receiving from their family and friends. I think that they will be more inclined to take it.
All right, Julian, we got to wrap it up there. Julian, Dr. Summers, thanks so much for being with us here on Open.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
All right. Well, listen, now, if you want more information, do us a favor. Visit their website at thethinkubator.org. And then you can also follow them on social media at The Thinkubator. We encourage you, stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We've got more Open coming up right after this.
Who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people, avoid crowds, stay home if you can, wash your hands frequently, learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
Welcome back to the show. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected many people globally, affecting individuals across the globe, with students and teachers alike, with virtual-based life becoming the new kind of standard. Now, despite the obstacles and challenges students face during the pandemic, online learning has become an efficient way to continue pressing and learning academically. Our next guest has used the moment of pause occasioned by COVID-19 to establish a Bronx-based model of learning, integrating grassroots innovations in pedagogy, student mentoring, and support services in the holistic, interconnected, and aligned experience for students at Bronx Community College. Somebody says, what does that all mean? Making online learning a whole lot better. Joining us now is the professor of the Department of History and the director of online learning at Bronx Community College. We're pleased to be joined by Getman-Eraso and Jordi, I should say Jordi Getman-Eraso. And Jordi, I'm sorry, good to have you this morning.
It's a pleasure being here, Daren. Thanks for having me.
And as I said to people, pretty much your job is to make online learning a whole lot more simpler. A part of that is really trying to adapt and navigate to A, this virtual environment, and then B, to help us to be able to move forward. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a really good question because, you know, I mean, I've been teaching online probably about 15 years now. And what used to be something that was seen, especially in CUNY, as somewhat of, you know, an alternative way of learning that some students might be interested in, now has turned into what all of our students are forced to learn through. This online modality has forced all of us to sort of scramble and adapt to the new reality. That said, we also, in moving online, have the challenge of continuing to reach our students at Bronx Community College. Our students are not just any kind of student. They often come in with a lot of learned experience. They come in with a high degree of intelligence, I would argue, and yet maybe they don't have the type of confidence or experience with college learning that students in other institutions might. Maybe they don't have somebody in their family that's attended college, so they don't know what they're walking into. And so on our end as professors, we really have to step up to becoming mentors for them, not just a professor or an instructor who is, in a more traditional sense, you know, a gatekeeper of knowledge. We now find most of that information online that we might have distributed to them in the past in a more traditional mode of instruction. And so the challenge for the instructor is to be able to look at the students, even though we're online, we have to reach out to them and understand where they're coming from. And once you are able to reach into the personal somewhat and try to bring it together with the academic, students, I think at Bronx Community College, we have found students are able to gain that level of confidence and connection to their education, so that going to college is not so much something that will be intimidating to them, but rather something that will become part of them, that they feel ownership over, and that as a result of that allows them to become empowered to become A, the best possible student, and then B, eventually find employment in an area that they would really enjoy working in.
So you're the newly appointed director of online learning. Congratulations about that too. And in the next question, I'll definitely talk to you about your duties. But I want to talk about from a student's perspective, because we automatically know students are going to have to make a transition to college, make a transition to the classroom, and then ultimately making that transition post-pandemic to a virtual environment. What have you gathered from students with regards to this transition? How are they making the transition, and how would you grade them making the transition?
That's a really good question, and it's something that I think before the pandemic we couldn't really have guessed where it would have gone. But we find it. We've done some surveying of students, and we've actually we've gotten on Zoom calls with students as well to get direct feedback, but also surveys. And what's really interesting is that there are a large number of students who just have not adapted very well to online learning. They find it difficult. The technology sometimes can be a handicap because they don't have access to some of the computers or internet speeds that would be good for effective online learning. Beyond that, if you think about it, one of the big obstacles too is finding a space in which you can devote yourself to your education. So most of our students are living with family or in apartments, just like all of us. Finding a space within that apartment to be able to sit down and concentrate on your education when you have a lot of other responsibilities in life has been a big obstacle. That said, we're working really diligently to be able to provide our students with as much of the technology that we can. We are limited somewhat by budgeting. That's another big obstacle that the pandemic has brought forth. But what we also find is, on the other hand, there are students who, and I would say from our surveying, about 30 to 40% of our students who actually either prefer online learning or have found it to be easier to adapt to. And these are students who maybe they all have very busy lives. They have a lot of responsibilities, family, work, etc. And so for some students, being able to not have to travel to the campus repeatedly throughout the week to go to classes, cutting that time out of, or regaining that time for their schedule, for their personal schedule, has become a beneficial, sort of a silver lining to the pandemic, let's say. And so they also find that some of our students have become, they might not have thought that online learning would be good for them, but they've really taken to the technology and to the ways in which we're also looking at professors. What type of professor is best suited for online learning, so that we can then, as we move away from the pandemic and professors and students will be filtering back to our campus for face-to-face courses, there will be a chunk of our professorate who will continue to teach online as part of our newly just now accepted by the state of New York new degree in liberal arts and sciences, AA degree. So we are going to be adding more degrees to that as we move forward. More departments are really interested in online learning because it does offer our students and some of our professors an advantage.
Yeah. Before we close out, I want to have the opportunity of asking you about what students can get by virtue of this class, talking about an e-portfolio. For some people who don't know what an e-portfolio, I know you guys are going to be helping out and developing an e-portfolio for students. What exactly is that, and what does that look like?
A new portfolio is basically a website that the student creates and can manipulate and curate without actually needing to know any programming skills. So at that level, it also allows for faculty and students to engage each other and to interact and comment on each other's work. The main aim of an e-portfolio, integrating e-portfolios into our teaching, is to give students a platform of their own where they can not just post homework, but also reflect on what they're learning. The idea here being that if this e-portfolio becomes their ownership, it's a technological tool, but conceptually, it really allows them to develop a space that is theirs academically, that they can then curate and develop into something that they could use to either transfer to a four-year school within CUNY, hopefully, or beyond, or they can use it to as a type of online CV that has a lot more of them integrated into it that they could present to potential employers.
Jordi Getman-Eraso, thank you for being with us.
It has been a pleasure, Daren. Thank you so much. Anytime you want, I'm here to talk to you guys.
Definitely. We'll definitely have to have you back here on the show. I want to let you know that if you want more information, what we do is we encourage you to visit the website at bcc.cuny.edu. And we encourage you, please don't go anywhere. We've got more show coming up. We'll be right back right after this. Welcome back to the show. The Rebirth of a Woman is a women's-based movement that provides artistic platforms for survivors of abuse as well as trauma. In celebration of Women's History Month, the movement is holding several events, including multiple borough food drives, virtual empowerment circle in South Africa, women empowerment dinner, and a Mommy and Me yoga as well as meditation and mindfulness teachings. Now, here to share a little bit more about the Rebirth of a Woman's founder is Mercy Baez and also President Nikkia Singletary. And Mercy, we'll start off first and say hello and good morning.
Grand Rising, it's so good to be back. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And we also want to thank Nikkia for joining us as well. And I'll get right at it and ask the question, Mercy, first of you. A lot going on throughout the course of Women's History Month, but Rebirth of a Woman is really focusing and on this particular month at really empowering women.
Right, absolutely. So the Rebirth of a Woman LLC really focuses on giving a platform, many different platforms artistically, to survivors of abuse and trauma. And so for Women's History Month and for Domestic Violence Month in October, we really focus in on giving as much as we can for those months specifically. So we have weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly events. We're going to have different mindfulness, meditation, and yoga teachings every Wednesday at 3 p.m. And that is live streamed on Instagram from my Instagram page. It's me and my daughter. The reason why that was created, it was to focus in on the youth from newborn to fifth graders, really trying to figure out how can we help them while being at home during such a time of COVID and having a new norm with homeschooling. We also opened up a platform of a weekly podcast show every Saturday at 6 p.m., allowing different women and different people to speak on women history and different women topics. And then we just had our many food burial drives as well to give back to our communities continuously.
Yeah. And Nikkia, congratulations. You are the new president. Talk to us about your role and responsibility now as being president.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I feel as though the rebirth of a woman is something that affects all women. So it's going to take more than one woman to just really put the movement on her back. And in that sense, I feel as though just being able to be eager to show women, to help women, you know what I'm saying? Empowering women is just helping women help themselves. So in that, I could say, as a person who's really been on my own for a long time, had to figure out different things and just figure out how to navigate a peaceful life in this life. I feel like that's something that we can all share with each other. So.
Yeah. And Mercy, I know that a part of one of your components is really doing mindfulness and meditation, right?
Yeah.
Give us a little bit about what that means in the life of a woman to create this mindfulness and then also participate in meditation.
Being mindful is really being mindful of not only what's around you, but yourself and how you respond and co-respond to situations and how you want to live about in your life. It's really how you bear situations and how you show others how to interact. So being that I'm a mother, I have to really set a tone and be a prime example for my daughter. And in moments of being so frustrated, being mindful can show you exactly why you're frustrated and how you can capture it so that it doesn't get out of hand. And meditation just kind of combines with the mindfulness and really allows you to calm yourself and connect with your mind, body, soul, and spirit, and really get deeper as to why you are reacting and feeling the way you are, so that it's no longer a bad pattern in your life. You are now healed and you are now acting differently and more maturely, or whatever it is that you want to call it, that's helping you with healing and love to be more vibrant in your life.
So I know you got a couple of events that are supposed to be scheduled upcoming for both March and then also into April, I'm told. So give us a little bit about some of the upcoming events.
Yeah, so we have the opportunity to team up with the Andrew Freeman home. That is a very dear home in the Bronx, and to throw a woman empowerment dinner. I would love Nikkia to explain exactly the idea of what the empowerment dinner is.
It's an honor to be able to have it at the Andrew Freeman home, which is a staple for New York City. It's a really gorgeous place. And then to be able to bring women there and have them dress up and, you know what I'm saying, put on their, what we would call Sunday's best, and come out and be entertained the way that Queens used to be back in the day, you know what I'm saying, where we're going to have people who come and sing or poetry. But it's also sparking conversations that are so necessary in the days to come. You know what I'm saying? It's sparking conversations about coping mechanisms. It's sparking conversations about being mindful of each other and our own mentals. It's just genuinely creating a safe space or a safe haven where we all know it's okay not to be okay. You know what I'm saying? And we're all trying to figure that out.
And so, as you have these events, obviously women gather together. It's an opportunity for women to come together in fellowship and to really get some empowerment, as we say, right? So share with me a little bit more about what that means to have the women's bonding. I mean, we talk about Women's History Month right now, and I talked to several women. They're like, I just love March because it just gives us such a great sense of enthusiasm and a shot in the arm. What do you feel as though these dinners and even this month really means to you guys?
I feel like it's the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like, in that sense, right, this month, it's her story. You know what I'm saying? So we're going through so many different things where women warriors and first women to do this, or women inventors, you know what I'm saying? So it really begins that conversation of inspiration. It starts that conversation of confirmation, you know what I'm saying? Like, of affirmation. It really is, I feel that conversation period, for us to be able to talk to each other about the different things that we've done, or to talk about other things that we aspire or we are inspired by other women, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just opens us up to a conversation that we don't normally have, because women are never in the forefront. So
right.
for this
and the main motto is really just educating, uplifting, and empowering each other. So really, really understanding different point of views and different perspectives within experiences of trauma and abuse, and how to survive that. But not only just survival, it's just being a woman. What does it mean to be female, to be a Black and or brown woman today in America? And how can we utilize being a woman to be successful, and just like Nikkia said, to cope and to, like, you know, adjust within our environments and with our world, and really just finding our purpose and living within our purpose, and showing that as new generations to come, a lot of things do change. So a lot of older school people would stick to certain teachings that are kind of like, you know, evading today. And women have to stand more in the forefront, just like Nikkia said. And so just, you know, really preparing and encouraging each other on what that means to be prepared while you're there doing the necessary work.
Well, we want to thank you both for coming and being here on Open. Certainly a lot of information to share. Excuse me, a lot of events coming up in the future too. So we want to make sure that your people are connected. So we'll definitely make sure that we get the word out. But thank you guys for coming. I should say ladies. Thank you, ladies, for coming and being with us here on the show.
Thank you so much for having
me.
Well, Mercy and Nikkia, thank you so much for being with us here on the show and all the work that you're doing in uplifting women, particularly during Women's History Month. I want to let you know, for more information, you can follow them on Instagram at the Rebirth of _a_woman. And we want to let you know that we've also come to the end of our show today. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us, and most of all, you, the viewer, for tuning in. If you missed any part of the show, you can catch Recablecast on Bronx Channel 67. Also, if you have Verizon Files 2133, or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. Also, if you desire a brand new episode, fresh episode of Open, come back on Friday. My girl, Rena Valentine's got arts, entertainment, as well as some COVID-related information. Until then, I'm Daren Jaime saying take care, God bless. Most of all, keep this channel wide open.